Welcome back to the Football Talk Squadron. I'm Maul.
And I'm Dutch.
This is going to be an NFL episode where we review Week 10, kind of talk about the games, what happened, our thoughts on it, and kind of going forward what we think the rest of the NFL is going to shake out in any scenarios we see playing. But first, everybody's favorite game, Guess the Player. It's my turn to give the clues, Dutch to answer, so your choice, past or present.
Let's go past.
Past. Okay, so this is my little, I call it my Matt Castle revenge. You got me the other day. Off screen, but former USC player that I wasn't able to guess. So this is my revenge for that for your Alabama player.
Ooh.
All right, are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Past, but like still pretty current. That'll be your first clue.
Okay.
Honestly, he might still be on a team, but I'll give you the past. So college, Alabama.
Okay.
He played for the Miami Dolphins, the Arizona Cardinals, the Las Vegas Raiders, the Baltimore Ravens, and then if you need a hint, I'll give you the last hint where I think he's on the practice squad, but I don't.
What was the first team?
The Miami Dolphins.
This is Kenyon Drake.
Kenyon Drake. You got it. Dang.
The Ravens was the key part because when the guy for Ohio State that keeps getting injured every single year, the running back. Really good.
J.K. Dobbins.
J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah.
When he got hurt, they went out and
signed Drake.
It signed Drake,
Yeah.
but then Drake, he had like a fumble the very first week he got in.
And there's been a few seasons, like I think it was when he was on the Cardinals. He was like the real deal. Like I feel like he was almost like the Jay Ajayi where he was on the Cardinals, and you're like, dude, you could see the talent was there, but he just could never really get going. And then like the instant they trade him, boom, superstar. Because Jay Ajayi basically did the same thing with the Eagles.
Yeah,
and he was a real deal there for like a season or two.
One of your hints going to be the Miami Miracle, or is that going to be too much? He was the guy that caught that one.
No, so the other hint, well, I think he's on the Colts practice squad right now. But I didn't even know if that would help.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
All right, present.
All right, so present. And this one, I think this one's kind of easy. It's a little bit of a softball because, again, it's a recent player. Which I thought should have been more relevant, but, just the way things swing out. And he's kind of just recently got, like, to be in the starting role. Chuba Hubbard.
Oh, man. That is a good one. I don't know why my mind goes to this, but I want to say Iowa State.
Close.
But
close. Same conference.
Okay.
And then same.
Oh, it was Oklahoma State.
There you go. Oklahoma State. There you go. Dude, that year, I mean, like.
They were really good.
He was so good. I want to say they were like talking about him as like a Heisman candidate for a while because he was.
No, he was a real deal coming out of college.
Really good.
Which, I mean, it's funny that the Panthers trade all that to go get Miles Sanders. And Miles is getting completely out-touched by Hubbard.
Or
Hubbard,
yeah,
sorry.
That's why I was saying, like, in college, you're like, dude, this guy is good. And then it seems like he's just kind of been a backup his entire NFL career. Like, he's never really gotten the touches. And then, Miles Sanders comes in, and he got hurt, and that's kind of what let Chuba Hubbard get in the game. And then it was one of those where, like, you start watching the games and film, and you can tell, like, it's very clear which one is the better back when you're watching the game, and it's Chuba Hubbard.
The problem is as good as he plays, God, the Panthers are terrible.
Yeah.
Which is the Thursday night game. Talk about just, I mean, I don't know what it is with Amazon and Thursday night games, but you're like, I don't even know who this coming week is, but I can guarantee you it's two teams that are absolutely garbage.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the NFL primetime games. I mean, I feel like this started a few years ago, but it's almost like they schedule some of these primetime games to just be absolute sleepers. I mean, this week especially, Panthers-Bears, snore fest. Last night, Raiders, Jets.
And
I mean,
they had
like
the ability to flex it, and they didn't flex that game out.
I mean, we're
don't
talking
understand.
about like one touchdown between the two games, and then this year or tonight, which it's Monday night, you got the Bills and the Broncos. Which the Bills are, kind of have the last few years been a good team, but like they're not really that good this year. They're 5-4. I think the Broncos are close to the same. Like it's just a weak primetime slate.
As much as I'm glad I didn't bet any money on next week being terrible too. Next week's really good. Bengals, Ravens.
That will be
a good game.
Yeah.
I'll stay up and watch that one.
And I don't know if it's like the short week type of thing, but like Thursday nights have just been. It was like 2 years ago. Remember we were talking about like if you would have just bet the under on every single Thursday night game, you'd have been rich.
Yeah, if you kept rolling it over, yeah.
Snooze fest.
I mean, the Panthers. We were talking about it off camera. You cannot watch the Panthers and watch them play and then not go like, I think a lot of heat comes on Bryce Young, especially with how C.J. Stroud's playing, and we'll get into that. But you watch it and you go, man, like, would C.J. Stroud do better? And I sit back and I go, that begs the question of like, well, what makes the Texans better than the Panthers? Both of them were in sort of similar positions. I can't help but not go, look at who the head coach is. Like, they go get D'Amico Ryans, who's known, like, proven great defensive coordinator, like, doing great things, comes from a winning organization.
Yeah.
Like, San Francisco knows how to win.
Yep.
And he brought that exact same mentality to the Texans, and it's working out. And then you have Frank Wright, who got fired from the Colts because they were terrible. And when you sort of think about their divisions, you're like, the Colts were in a division that was sort of the Colts division. Like, the Jags, the Titans, and the Texans, all the Colts had to do was just find a way to beat those teams, and they win it.
We've talked about this multiple times, though. Like, the NFL, I don't know what it is, where they just do this carousel of just bad coaches.
Yes.
And, like, I don't know why an organization will look at a coach and be like, man, that guy was a terrible coach on that team. He'll definitely be a good coach for our team. Like, it's happened. I mean, like, Bill O'Brien is a perfect example. Like, how many times are you just going to keep moving these bad coaches around to these different teams and expect a different result? It's so odd to me that these teams continue to do that.
And it's not just the bad coaches. We were talking about this earlier. Like, I think a guy that has proven this year, I think he proved for the past few years, like, this guy deserved a chance at head coach. The players said he deserved a chance to be a head coach. Even the head coach that he was under said, this guy needs to be a head coach. He moves, to which you responded with, like, hey, this dude moved in order to prove, like, this wasn't a fluke. I think he's proven it. It's Eric Bellamy with the Commanders.
Yeah,
he's doing amazing.
Everybody, I mean, like, again, he did such a good job, and like that's kind of why the Chiefs became the Chiefs. Obviously, it helps when you have Patrick Mahomes, but he wasn't getting the credit he deserved because of Patrick Mahomes. Everybody's like, "Oh yeah, it's easy to coach Patrick Mahomes, right?" But which is true. Like, it makes your job easier when you have someone like that. Like, that's why Byron Leftwich was able to be an offensive coordinator, because he had Tom Brady throwing the ball. You know what I mean? It's like, it's easy when you're that guy. But he moved because he's like, I'm never going to get a head coaching job if I don't go out and do the same thing. And I mean, you talked about it. You and I both at the beginning of the season wrote off Sam Howell, right? Now, I'm not going to call home and be like, Sam Howell is a franchise level quarterback, but the fact that it was an offense going in that nobody gave any shot to, that the Commanders are playing well when they need to, and Sam Howell is doing way better than I think a lot of people gave credit to. I mean, that's got to be one thing, and that's coaching.
Well,
and
they are competitive in every game. Like, you look at the Giants also in their division. You're like, the Giants quarterback's getting,
terrible.
His bed made by his own mom. So like,
he needs it because he's going to be there, at the end of the season, because he's not getting any starting job anytime soon.
Hope you saved all that money, dog, because being an NFL quarterback's not going to be the answer. Yeah, but I just sit back and we get into that coaching piece, and you look, and I think it's for both teams that played on Thursday night. You look at the Panthers, you look at the Bears, and you're like, why are these teams in the position that they're in? Coaching. This was the stat I saw, and I was like, man, I would not have said that. Since 1985, how many Pro Bowlers have the Bears had at quarterback?
Pro Bowlers?
Yep. a Pro Bowl quarterback since 1985.
One?
Who was it?
McMahon?
Nope.
Cutler?
Nope. Trubisky.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, that 1 year.
That
one
one
year with Matt Nagy. Yep. That's right. That's right.
And our buddy Pops, he was talking about it and sent me text, and I know he's probably blowing up your phone too. It's sort of this cyclical cycle. Like they go get a coach who drafts this quarterback. Well, then they fire the coach, who they then get a new coach
That
who
didn't
doesn't
want that quarterback. Yeah.
So he drafts another guy, and then they just keep playing this game as they go down. That's the thing that I sit back and I look at. The Bears are in that exact position because, lucky for them, unlucky for the Panthers, they own the Panthers' first-round pick. And by beating them, it makes it even more likely that they're going to own the number one overall. Now, I know that we have gone back and forth on this show, and I think it's a good time to talk about it with talking about the number one pick. Has Caleb Williams had bad games? Yeah, no doubt. And I think that I want you to talk about what you told our buddy Slam about what you said, because I think that it is, for as bad as some games he's played, I think that this is the main reason why.
Yeah, so, again, I'm a big Caleb Williams fan. He has looked pedestrian in some games, or, he's made mistakes kind of at big times, and I'm not trying to say that it's okay, but part of the reason for that, when you watch those games, is O-line stinks. He's under duress all the time. So he's trying to, but he also knows that, like, if he takes a sack or if he doesn't score points, that defense is not showing up.
Ain't stopping nobody.
A wet paper towel, and they're going to get scored on. So in his mind, he's like, I'm the only hope we got to win these games, right? So I think he tries to do too much. Like, and that would be my one knock on him, is that there's times where he needs to just kind of roll out and throw the ball away, but he refuses to. Now, sometimes that results in these like amazing Patrick Mahomes level time like plays where you're just like, this dude's different. But there are times where like he'll be scrambling around and he'll try to do too much and like flip the ball and then he'll fumble. And you're like, man, if you would have just taken the sack or thrown it away. But it's like, that's all he's got. He has to be that entire team. And, our buddy Slam was like, man, USC's basically wasted 2 years of that dude's college career because of how good he is. Like, and you just try to imagine like Caleb Williams on like an Alabama or a Georgia type of team, like how special that would be. But, he's not. And my response was, oh yeah, we're Vanderbilt without him. You know what I mean? So
maybe a little low, but I mean, but I will say, when you watch Caleb, the throw that got me, I think it was against Cal. Yet again, he's running for his life. He's running to his left against his, he's running away from his throwing arm. For him to be able to throw, he's got to be able to rotate his shoulders and pivot. It's incredibly difficult. Like, I get that guys in the pros make it look easy. That's because they're professional athletes. But like, you watch some just average Joe Schmo quarterbacks like on Miami, Ohio, something, just throw the football, and you're like, yeah, that's not it. You will see Caleb Williams throw the football sometimes that you're like, and I know what the NFL's guys are doing. They're like, that's it. Like, that's the throw.
And that's what cracks me up. Like when you see like some of these, forums or guys talk about like, oh, Caleb Williams' stock is dropping, or like he's terrible, he's a fraud, blah, blah, blah. Like, because USC's lost games. Do you think any NFL scout cares that USC's losing games? Not a chance, dude. They're looking at the way he plays, and like you said, some of those types of plays that he makes that it's like nobody else in the country is even able to make. There are literally NFL quarterbacks playing right now that can't do some of the things that he's doing. Well, and
the NFL has always been about it. That's why they do the combine. It is about the things that you can't coach.
Yeah.
Like, what is this guy's arm? Like, can he throw? Like, is that velocity there that you look for? Like, these things that you look for, he has it. Now, yes, he makes some mistakes. And as you said, do coaches care about that? As long as he's coachable, no. Why? Because it's like, I can teach a guy how, hey, when this is presented, think about going here, do these different. They can utilize a whole system to put this guy into a good position where they can't coach. It's like, hey, when you're running to your left, if you could throw it 40 yards down the field and hit that dude in stride, it'd be great.
Patrick Mahomes, I'm gonna need you to jump out of bounds, be vertical or horizontal, sideways, and sidearm it around a dude through 2 other defenders.
If they
Can't coach that.
If they had won that Super Bowl, the Chiefs against the Bucks, they would have probably built 10 Mahomes statues around every NFL stadium to just be like, this was the best that it's ever going to be. Because when he threw that,
just worship this man.
Yeah, worship that dude. Because it was 2 passes that were broken up, but he threw 2 of the most amazing passes I'd ever seen. Because that one, he's literally parallel with the ground, throwing, and still hit the dude. Hit him. It was amazing. But that's the type of stuff, you sit back and you look at both of these teams. The Panthers don't need a quarterback. They need talent around Bryce Young. You look at Tank Dell, other guys that they put around CJ Stroud, and you go, hey, he's got some special talent. The best talent that the Panthers have, it's a washed up Adam Thielen. It's not Adam Thielen in his prime.
And they were talking about that in the game. I think it was Troy Aikman was saying, man, when your go-to guy is a 35-year-old white dude, that's not ideal. To try to win at an NFL level.
Exactly. I mean, you can't sit back. Now, for the Bears, you sit back, you see DJ Moore, Dante Foreman's running good. They have some talent. I sit back and I look at the Bears, and that's the question. It's you really need to trade Justin Fields. Try to get what you can out of him. I don't care if it's a 4th-round pick. Just get something to where you're not just cutting some dude and let someone else take on. He's still on his rookie deal. There's plenty of teams out there, a.k.a. the Falcons, that would be or
the Raiders or
just someone will take a chance. For them, getting him, and it would be a dream scenario for them to be 1 and 2 to get Marvin Harrison. I sit back and I know we had talked, and I was I can see Marvin Harrison going 1. The problem with that is wide receivers don't touch the football every play. The quarterback does. And if they're not going to draft a quarterback, they're more likely to draft an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman just because, hey, this dude, especially an offensive lineman, every time the offense on the field, that dude's there. I'll take the best at his position.
And he's got to protect the guy that's getting the ball every single play.
Every single play.
Yeah.
And that's as much as Bear fans may sit back and go, well, at least we can go get Marvin. It's no, I think that if the Bears need to go get something, they need to get an offensive lineman. There's a clip. I'll find it and I'll try to get it on to this video. The center is pass blocking, and sort of he's looking over here and turns back and starts blocking the guard.
Guy, yeah.
And you're just there were some Bears fans that were if this doesn't say what this season's all about right now, that's it.
Which, it's kind of hard because you go all right, get Caleb Williams, who I just said is under duress all the time and makes some kind of mistakes. You put him on the Bears team, who obviously is not that good with a bad offensive line. Maybe he's the exact same guy just in the NFL instead of NCAA.
Yeah, maybe. So that, I know it's a change of games. We've talked about hey, bad quarterback play, bad systems, all this stuff. What's your thoughts on the Patriots? And I'll put it this way. You wanted me to pull out the stat that I found earlier, and it's pretty frightening, honestly, when you really start to think about it. So Tom Brady last played for the Patriots in 2019. So 4
years
seasons.
Ago? Okay.
4 seasons.
Man, it seems longer than that.
He played for the Patriots for 20 years. 20 years. In those 20 years, Tom Brady lost 66 games. In the 4 years that he's been gone, the Patriots have lost 33. Half the amount of games that Tom Brady had lost, they've done in a fifth of the time. Do you think that speaks more to Mac Jones, Bill Belichick?
I mean, you can't just – I feel like you can't pinpoint it on one thing. Obviously – you want to blame, the players aren't the same, but I mean, Tom Brady was doing it with probably maybe not as bad of talent around him, but there were seasons there where he was with the Patriots where the talent was not top notch and he was still being able to win. So yes, I do think it's a lot on the players, but it does make you question the Bill Belichick, he's the GOAT coaches, right? And in my opinion, I don't think he's the best. Like, I think it's Andy Reid for the same purpose of like what we're talking about. Like, Andy Reid's won Super Bowls or taken teams to Super Bowls on multiple teams. He's coached multiple different players and still had success everywhere he goes.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, yes, even though the Patriots run there was historic and probably won't ever be seen again, it was just really because of one guy. I don't want to say it was because of one guy, but it's coincidental that before Tom Brady showed up, the Patriots weren't that good. And now that after he's left, they're not that good. Right? So, like, Belichick, now it's not his fault that he's only been able to, he was only on the Patriots this entire time, but like, it just seems like a lot of his success was clearly only because of Tom Brady, where you can't say the same for Andy Reid because he's had other players, on multiple different teams.
It helps strengthen the argument that Brady was the reason when Brady left the Patriots to go then win a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay.
Exactly.
Like, you sit back and you're like, okay, so Brady didn't need Belichick. Like, Brady did it on his own, which I think was a big reason Brady left, to just sort of prove, like, I didn't need the Patriots. Like, which I think that sort of, if anything, based upon the number of rings, everything, the Brady going to Tampa Bay, if anything, solidified him being the greatest of all time, because it was like, you didn't need a system to win.
Yeah.
Like, you went down there and you won on your first year. No one can argue that. Like, and then who'd he beat? He beat Mahomes.
He beat the Chiefs, yeah.
Of which I don't think anyone walked into that game not saying the Chiefs weren't going to win. Like, and then Tampa, I got to give it to their defense. They stepped up. I think they held them to 9 points that game. They didn't even score like a touchdown. It was like 33-9 or something. Like, it was a beating of a game. And you sit back and now you go to present day and it's like, I get why people are mad at Mac Jones. Like, Mac Jones didn't play well in that game at all.
He's looked really bad though. Like,
really bad.
I think they have to move on from Mac Jones, and I'll say the Bailey Zappi's not the answer, right? Like, it's funny because they'll take Bailey Zappi out. Everybody gets real excited, and he'll throw like a couple good passes, and everybody's like, "Yeah, see, like Mac Jones isn't making those throws," and you're like, "True," and then Bailey Zappi comes out, and you're like, "There he is."
Yeah, he fakes a snap and pick. That's in the game, and for me with the Pats, like. It's funny that you bring up Brady and like who he threw to. Brady never won a Super Bowl with anyone that's in the Hall of Fame for the wide receiver.
Yeah, because all those Randy Moss years and stuff like that, they didn't win that year.
They went undefeated.
They went undefeated, but they lost in the Super Bowl, right? So like,
and the closest guy that I think he could possibly argue to getting in, which I don't think he will, because he doesn't have. He has the playoff stats. He doesn't have the stats to back it up. Is Julian Edelman.
Yeah.
Like, outside of that guy, he doesn't really have. You think about his, Troy Brown and Deion Branch, like some of those guys. Outside of Gronk, like Gronk will be the first Hall of Fame ballot guy that he threw to, but it just wasn't there. And what's sad is like you sit back and I think everyone sort of knew that Vegas did. Vegas had him as an underdog going in there. The Colts are not a good football team.
No.
Like,
well, they lost Anthony Richardson. Like,
exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't have an offense designed around Gardner Minshew.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Patriots defense held them to 10 and then they still lost, you go, God bless. Like, just a bad football team.
Yep.
Like, all around.
Which, I mean, again, this is just goes to prove your point of how bad the Patriots should have won that game. Because at the end there, or when it was close to the end, Mac Jones had, I think it was the tight end. Maybe it was either Hunter Henry or Gesicki. I think it was Gesicki. Wide open. I mean, absolutely wide open in the back of the end zone. And he throws up a Tua fluff ball straight to the defense.
There was on a bye catching heat.
I mean, like, maybe he shouldn't have ate that popcorn before the game. I mean, like,
dude, that clip.
It was just such a bad throw.
But it's where the Pats are. I mean, they are the worst team in the AFC right now. Like, not just their division, in the whole AFC, which I think it's one of those ones that you sort of mention. A lot of people don't even remember how bad the Pats were before Brady.
Yeah.
Now, they did go to a Super Bowl. They got beat by Favre in Super Bowl 32, but
Yeah, before that, they were, awful.
Trash team. The only time they made a Super Bowl before that is when they faced the 85 Bears, and the 85 Bears did 85 Bear things. Like, outside of that, the Patriots have always sort of been that team that's been a bottom-of-the-barrel team. You're now getting to that point. And I think that's why there's probably some hesitancy to fire Belichick. Like, I can see it happening, but it's also one of those ones where it's like, not every team goes and hires a new coach that it just works out. It's like drafting a quarterback.
True.
Like,
yeah.
It's
especially the way that the NFL does things. I mean, they would hire somebody like Bill O'Brien or something. They would just upgrade.
They go get Josh McDaniels.
Yeah, exactly. Like they would do something like that.
God, Josh. I mean, thank God he's fired. Which I think it goes back to this whole like coaching thing. Like, because the next thing we're going to talk about is the Texans. Like, I sit back and I look at what DeMeco Ryans has done with the Texans, and I put it very much to what Pierce has done with the Raiders. Like, it's clear when you have buy-in from your players, which you were talking about, Reed, and I want you to bring this up with the laboratory comment on that quarterback thing.
From the Netflix show, the quarterbacks documentary. Andy Reid does this thing in practices. It's like Wednesdays or whatever. He calls it the laboratory on the field, where he lets players come up with plays. Like he tells them, like, bring me plays. Could be the craziest trick. I mean, you've seen the Chiefs do it. Their little like ring around the rosy thing that they do. Like, the players come up with that, and then they'll run it in practice. And if it like works, or it looks like something like Andy Reid could drop, he'll put it in the game plan. And it's one thing to just like even try that, right? Like most coaches won't even like have that, but to actually do it, like it gets the players involved. And when they get to run that play in the game, they are hyped for it. Like you said, it's that buy-in that people are like, this dude gets me and I want to win for him. That sometimes makes the difference in, whether you're a good team or not.
It even happened, and you may sit back for people who are watching be like, well, that's just the Chiefs and that. Like, probably one of the most iconic Super Bowl plays in history was not called by the head coach. It's the Philly special.
Like Philly.
Yeah. Foles came over and he was like, what do you think? He's like, what about Philly? And Peterson looked at him and they were like,
let's do it.
And you could tell when they called, like, all the players like, yo, dog, this is about to work.
Yeah, we
like,
doing this in the Super Bowl? Let's go.
Let's go. Like, but it takes that type of buy-in, and you see that out of the Texans. Like, here's a team that I don't think anyone thought was going to be competitive in games.
Their future is looking up, and it also helps that they're in a terrible conference. You know what I mean? Like, or a terrible division. Like, they have a bright future. C.J. Stroud, Tank Dell, new head coach. Like, their defense isn't that bad because DeMeco Ryans brings a good defense to their squad. Like, they've got. It might take a year or two, but like I hope they keep developing the way they are because they're looking legit.
They remind me. This is what I was going to say off camera. You're like, hold it. They remind me of the Jets. Like Matt Saleh. Like, you have a defensive mind. Clearly has buy-in. The difference between the Jets and the Texans right now, is quarterback. Like, which the big news to come out of today is that Aaron Rodgers has said, and I've talked about a little bit, that it would be crazy if he did, and it's still going to be. It will be unhuman if he comes back. And he said mid-December he's trying to come back.
Dude, so funny thing on the Jets, I think it was Mike Tirico last night. I was listening to the game, and it was like he threw it out there just kind of like a matter of fact. It was like part of the broadcast, but when he thought about it, he was like, the Jets haven't scored a touchdown in like 34 quarters or something like that.
36 offensive drives.
Yeah, or that's what it was, 36 offensive drives. And he goes, but they need one here to win the game. And he said it just kind of like as a, that's the matter of fact. But when you think about it, you're like, there's no chance they win because of that stat right there. Like, think about how hype we were all on the Jets. I think you picked them to go to the Super Bowl, right? I mean, like, but that's because you thought Aaron Rodgers, they've got that team. They've got that buy-in, right? Like, they've got the defense. It's all there. They're just missing that quarterback play.
Yes.
Which is unfortunate, right? Because injuries happen, but you just don't expect them to happen. But it's a testament, like we talked about, to the coaching. Like, when you get that coach that, one, is just great at what he does, but then gets the players to buy in. Another perfect example, Dan Campbell and the Lions. Like, the Lions have been, think we talked about it. Like the paper bag over the head will forever be ingrained in my mind of like that's what the Lions organization is always feeling like. And now, look at them, dude. They know what they're doing. They are a legit contender.
I love Dan Campbell's willingness to believe in his guys and go for it on fourth down. Like, because when they went for it on 4th and 2, like I was watching the game and you're like, man, if they don't get this, Herbert's going to drive it right down and get in field goal range.
It was like a Mike Vrabel decision, but without the poor outcome, right? But again, and
ain't that the truest thing in the world?
It sounds stupid, but like Mike Vrabel makes those decisions all the time. But he's never had that squad and like that faith and everything behind him. He's just like it's like Ron Rivera. Like Ron Rivera is famous for that. Like Riverboat Ron, we're gonna just do something stupid in the middle of the game because like I like to be different. But he's never had that like true buy-in and reason for doing things, right? They asked Dan Campbell about it, and he was just like, I believe in my guys. We had it was a feel of the moment.
What's all three of those guys have in common?
Who?
That you just named. Rivera, Dan Campbell, and Vrabel. What's the one commonality they all have compared to other coaches?
Did Ron Rivera play?
Yeah, they were
all players.
Rivera was on the 85 Bears.
Okay,
like,
I didn't know that.
I sit back and I look at that and I go, that when they go for it, that's what I see. Like I see the player,
coming out.
Yes, he's like, dude, we have this game. These are my boys. Yeah. We're riding or dying.
Because you feel it. I mean, anybody who's played the game, like it's a momentum thing, and like you know, if you're not in the game, it's hard to tell, but like you feel it in the moment of like we've got this. Like there's this like little thing in the back of your mind of like they can't stop us. Like I'm going to run this play and I know it's going to hit. It's like it's like the if you see it, it'll happen kind of thing. Like you envision it before it happens, and it's that player mentality that comes out.
And you can for sure get it in a huddle, and I think even more so as a head coach. Like you can look at your guys and you know that if I call the fourth down, these dudes are getting it. Like you see it with Campbell.
Perfect example, Harbaugh with Lamar. Remember that clip where he runs out and he's like, Lamar, you want to go for it? And Lamar's like, F yeah. Like, again, when he's like, dude, the coach is asking me, like, I'm not going to let him down. I'm getting this first down.
Yes.
And he got it. You know what I mean? Like, they do that, and it's a feel, but that's what makes good head coaches, or separates them from the bad ones.
And you can see that in D'Amico Ryans. Yeah. Like, when he went into the locker room, and, like, he talked about it, he's like, we play, every down. Like, give that effort. Like, because when it gets down to the end of the game, we're going to be in a position to win. And they won. Now, I get it. It's this, like, catch-22. The Texans had every business losing that game because Boyd dropped that touchdown.
Yeah.
Like, if Boyd catches that, not saying that C.J. Stroud couldn't have taken him down and scored. He did the week prior against Baker. It's just a lot more difficult, like, to do it back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, but, I mean, you got to give them credit. Like, again, even though you say they should have lost the game, one, they didn't. But two, I mean, the fact that they were even in that game as close as it was going back and forth, I mean, that's just a testament to how good they are, right? Like, if you'd have told me at the beginning of the season, like, the Texans are going to give the Bengals a run for their money and beat them, I thought you were crazy. Or like, did Joe Burrow break his leg? Now, the way the season started, the Bengals looked terrible, right? They looked really bad. But the last few weeks, dude, the Bengals are like, okay, this is the Bengals showing up. And, like, they've been on a streak. And I personally, I picked the Bengals in this game because I thought, like, dude, the Bengals are, like, looking like one of the best teams in football right now because Joe Burrow's healthy and all that stuff. And I'll be honest, I wasn't sure whether the Texans were kind of fluky or not, right? Like, now, C.J. Stroud looked amazing last week, but it was like, it was against
they lost to the Panthers.
It was against the Bucks, and they've lost the Panthers. Maybe it's just kind of a fluke. But then he shows out again, and it's like, all right, yeah, I don't need to see anymore. Like, they're the real deal. Like, they're going to be a problem for years to come.
And they have a chance to, I think, really cement going to the playoffs this year because next week they play Jacksonville. And I will talk about the Jacksonville when we get to the Niner game. But from that standpoint, like you sit back and you go, the Texans have a good chance to get into the playoffs. And are they a good enough team that I think they can win
a game?
A game? For sure.
Yeah.
Can they win every single week? be very tough.
Sure, sure. I mean, that's tough for anybody to do.
It's just they don't have that type of squad.
That's why I say, like, they're going. It's going to take maybe a year or two for them to build. But if they keep going on this vector, dude, they're in really good shape, and they're going to have the AFC South on lock because there is nobody else to challenge them right now.
100%. what's funny is then you look at the Bengals and you go, man, they're 5-4, winning record,
Dead last.
God bless. Like, you just look at that division and you're like, man, like the only team that I think is a fluke,
Steelers.
Yes.
Yeah, Steelers are fraud. I said the Steelers were a sneaky good team, I thought, at the beginning of the season. Look kind of smart because they've got a good record, but I think when you watch them play, they're not as good as their record shows.
They just got a sneaky record. Like,
I think they're the opposite of the Chargers to me. The Chargers are such a good football team to be like 4-5 or whatever.
Can't find a way to
yeah,
win.
You know what I mean? Like, they just can't find a way to win. Whereas the Steelers don't look that good, but somehow just keep winning football games.
I mean, the Steelers play the Packers, which I'm glad that it's at least my predictions becoming right. Like, I think we both maybe said the Packers were finishing dead last, which, yes, they're playing with the Bears for dead last. It just goes to show, like, I don't think that Matt LaFleur is like one of those type of coaches that, like, he's all what they did when they fired Mike McCarthy was bringing a skinnier Mike McCarthy. Like, just a guy that he calls plays, but at no point are you like, hey, man, that dude's like, he's got a mind that's making all this else work. Because they have talent on that team. They should be better than they are.
Well, I mean, again, it's one of those, like, they lose Rodgers, right? Like, the only reason the Packers were even halfway relevant was because they had Rodgers. You know what I mean? Like, now you take away Rodgers and you're left with the trash that Rodgers wanted to get away from. And look at them. They're terrible.
Terrible.
They're a terrible team.
It cracks me up that they did it again this year. Like, hey, we have a brand new quarterback, probably need some help. Let's go defensive in the draft.
Yeah.
And you're just like, dude, this is like, I can't, I think every fan in the NFL is like, hey, man, for sure next year, you got to go find somebody on offense to help this team out.
And
like,
I don't know who's making those calls. Like, it's definitely not Matt LaFleur, but, like, still.
The only thing I figure is they have a dartboard like up, and it's just top 100 players, and it's all defensive except for like two guys, and they just throw it, and it's like, oh, yet again, another defensive guy. We'll take, but that's what they do. And I sit back at both teams, at least like the Packers, you don't know where Love's at right now. I don't think there's any doubt that Pickett's not the guy. Like, you sit back and watch them, and you're like, yo, like, I get they don't have all the talent in the world on offense, but
I think he would be a good backup somewhere.
Yes.
Like, he's a guy that you're comfortable bringing in when your starter goes down, but yeah, he's not going to be the guy that's leading you, to championships and Super Bowls.
And I don't want to say this as if it's a big dig on this guy. I think it's more of just like, I said it last week, I think it's the most undervalued guy in the NFL right now. Like, it's funny how inconsistent Pickett plays, and then you have a guy like Dobbs,
dude,
that shows
talk
up.
about fantasy dark horse. Remember?
Yeah.
Look, you said Goff, and I said I think Derek Carr, dude. Whoever had Dobbs on that board, champion, dude. Guy's a legend.
It's unreal.
Legend.
The Vikings are going right now. The Vikings are in, like, they own the wild card slot right now. And they beat the Saints. Like, the Saints are right now the divisional leader in the NFC South. Now, I get it's not a good division, but, like, from that standpoint, like, you sit back and they're doing it without Justin Jefferson. Like, once Justin Jefferson comes back, it'll be the most talent that Dobbs has ever had on a roster around him.
Look out, man. Like, don't get me wrong. I feel so bad for Kirk Cousins because he's such a good dude. And you have this feeling now that you're like, is this the end of Cousins' career kind of thing? But, like, dude, Dobbs is
balling
legit with a capital L, dude. Like, the man is a legend.
And you can't not root for the guy because, like, you watch him and you're like, here's a guy that's pretty humble about it. Like, he's almost more surprised than we are that he's doing it.
Yeah, he was talking about it the first game. I can't even remember who they came back and beat.
The Falcons.
Was it the Falcons?
It was the Falcons.
He was like, I don't even know half these dudes' full names. Like, he was there for like half a week, and then they make him play.
He had to huddle up with the offensive lineman during the game before we went in just so they could hear his cadence for the first time because he never took a snap that whole week.
I mean, just legend. Dude. Legend.
Which, for them to beat the Saints, like, that's, like, underappreciated. Like, that should be a way bigger story in the NFL. Like, man, Like, you have a guy that legitimately is still just like a week off of just practicing for the first time, and they're beating a divisional leader in the Saints.
And we talked about, like, it's one thing to, like, get lucky or, like, have a certain, like, special teams play, like, swing the momentum of the game. Like, that's not it. Dobbs is going out there and balling out. He looks like a top 10 quarterback.
Who else has Dobbs beat this year? Beat
the Cowboys.
Yes, with the Cardinals. Like, that's why I just sit back and I go, man, when Jefferson comes back, you got him and Addison and Hawkinson. Now, it sucks because Akers was looking good and tore his Achilles. Like, Madison's still a good running back. Like, the Vikings have the pieces. I don't think it would take a lot for them to unseat the Lions.
They need
in that
some
division.
work on the defensive side.
Yes.
And we knew that from last year. But, dude, yeah, like.
They're a good team.
Yeah.
Good team.
Better watch. They to me are like they're like a spoiler. Like, they're going to be one of those teams that, like, I would say beat the Chiefs, or like they're going to be like they play the Eagles or something in the divisional round and knock them off. You know, it's something where, like, they've got that level of talent. They're not going to win it all, but they're going to spoil somebody's season, I can promise you.
It's because they have nothing to lose. Like, Dobbs goes out there and he's like, hey, you just brought me in last week. Like, I'll throw it. Like, I'll see what happens.
But again,
like,
I think Kevin O'Connell, another good coach, like one of those guys that understands his players and, like, can connect with them on a certain level that gets them to do, to buy in. Like,
yes.
I can't stress how important that is to some of these guys and, like, how that makes teams better.
It's why guys like you brought, I feel awful for him. Like, it's why Saban didn't work out in the league. It's why, I look at Bill O'Brien just screaming at Mac Jones and I go, what do you think the impact is? And don't get me wrong, there are certain players that you can yell at and it will get them going. It's usually not the quarterback. Like,
yeah,
being honest, like that's like what you say to your middle linebacker that you're like, you suck. And he's like, I'm about to go murder.
Get that dude hyped up enough so he goes, takes that guy's head off.
yeah, I don't want to fight him, but he's going to go fight somebody now. Like, you watch these really good coaches. Like, think about Reed. Like, Reed may sit back and, like, look at some guy after a pill and be like, what are you doing? Like, you can't do that. But, like, it comes from this point. Like, you almost feel like it's a disappointed dad. Like, from that standpoint, and guys play for that. Like, no one wants to disappoint their dad. But then, like, you have O'Brien, and it's like, that's the worst boss I ever had, and now he's yelling at me.
Yeah.
I don't want this job anyhow. Yeah. I quit. Like, have fun finding a new job.
Yeah, remember Jim Harbaugh and the Niners? They got rid of him because the players didn't like him. They're like, he's mean.
Yeah.
He's a mean guy. They didn't like him.
That's why Urban Meyer didn't work out in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's tough to say, but, like, at the end of the day, like, these dudes are professionals and they know it, and they're like, dude, you're not gonna yell at me like that or be treated like I'm some child.
And it's because college is different from professional sports. Yeah. Like, at the end of the day, college kids are like, I'm trying to get money. This NFL dude, like, you can't sit back and pay a guy, 10 times what the coach get, and the coach be like, you're not pulling your weight. And he's like, well, you'll be gone before I am because I'm still going to get paid. Yeah. Like, there's plenty of teams that will pay me my money. You'll be out of the league in 2 years. And it happens all the time. Like, and I think that's a good point. Like, coaches that find buy-in from players understand that they need the players more than the players need them.
True.
Like, I'm just a conduit to help you win and just put you guys into the right positions in the game, because ultimately, let's be real, half of these players are probably not sitting back watching film as much as the coach. Like, there's a few guys like Mahomes and Brady, those type of guys that you can tell the guys that watch film, like Ed Reed on the defensive side of the ball, like, those guys are special. The vast majority of the time, it's like, hey, I just got to put this guy into the right position with his athleticism and just tell him, just go that way. Like, and you'll get it.
Yeah.
Sorry, changing the subject. It makes me laugh so much. Greatest defensive player of all time, Lawrence Taylor. He lines up, and he's supposed to be dropping back. Well, blitz and sack. And now he's playing under, like, one of the biggest disciplinarians of all time, Bill Parcells. And Bill Parcells is, like, staring at him when he comes over. He's like, you're supposed to drop back. You can't do that. Da, da, da. He's like, sure enough, fourth quarter, game's on the line. What's he do? They call the same play. What's he do? He rushes again. But this time, he strip sacks, and they pick it up, and they score. And he said that, like, he's staring at him. LT comes back and he's like, I did it again, didn't I? He's like, yeah, you did it again. He goes, we don't even have that play in our playbook. And LT goes, well, maybe we should put it in there. Like, I sit back and I think about that play all the time. Like, it's about putting your playmakers in the position to win.
Yeah,
like,
it's the classic where you go, no, no, no. And then all of a sudden it works out and you go, yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's Brian Billick with the Ravens.
Yeah.
He's like, don't.
Yeah. No,
take a knee,
yeah, no, Ed, no. Wait, go, Ed, go. Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad because I got to do this transition now of like, you talk from these teams that like have it. And we talked about Vrabel. I think Vrabel is a player's coach. The issue is like, you look at the Titans are terrible. Like, I get
There's a lot of problems with the Titans.
Oh my goodness. I feel bad. Like, Levis comes out, has like an amazing game, and it's like, and we're back to reality. Like, and it's not, I don't want to put it on Levis. It's because that roster is terrible. Like, they don't have an offensive line. You have Derrick Henry and you have D-Hop, and that's it. Like, that's it. They don't have a defense. They trade away their best player in Bard to the Eagles. Yeah. They have Simmons on the defensive line, but it's like, guess what? Like, you get double teamed every single play. Like, good luck winning football games when the other guys can't win one-on-one matchups.
Yeah, and then again, like I talked, Vrabel makes some of these decisions sometimes. Where you're just like, what are you doing? Like, just kick the field goal. Don't go for two or whatever it is. And I can't tell you how many times he's lost games because of that. Like, it happens every year on multiple occasions.
I mean, the one that I've brought this up like 15 times, and sorry to bring it up again for people who listen all the time, but I will never forget them playing the Bengals in the playoffs as the number 1 seed, and it's 4th and 1, and they run a zone read, and Tannehill keeps the football and gets stuffed. And I'm like sitting there, and I'm like, if you were going to call zone read, just line up in a power eye and say mano-a-mano, Derrick Henry up the middle. It's like doing the
Oklahoma drill.
Well, it's brotherly love. Like, we're just going to line up, and it's our best versus your best. We'll see who can stop it. I think our guy's going to win. Like, but they didn't do that. Like, you took the ball out of your best player's hand. That's the thing that's frustrating. And then you sit back and you look on the other side of the Titans. Like, I like what Mayfield's doing. It's funny. I never thought or seen what you were talking about with Mike Evans.
Mike Evans is the quitter.
Yes.
Dude, watch it next time. This is my toot my own horn. The Trevor Lawrence. I called it before anybody else.
Yeah, we're
did.
going to get in that.
It was proven here, but this is my Mike Evans take. Watch Mike Evans. And I don't know. I've seen him do this for a while now, and it just seems like it's more relevant now. And it could just because he knows he's on a contract year and like he's trying to maybe save himself, but it just never fails. Whether he catches the ball or not, if he runs more than like 15 yards down the field on a route, he'll just take himself out of the game. He just like won't play the next play to either like recoup. Either his conditioning's that bad or he's just like, I don't care, but like watch it all the time. It'll be like a long pass or something, and he just, instead of like running back to the huddle, he just walks off the field and then kind of saunters back down the sideline, and then he'll maybe go in the following play. And again, it's like if you're a fantasy owner, if you have him on your team or anything, like it's infuriating because you're just like, dude, there's guys out there that are playing every single play, and that's, a lot of that is like volume. You need the volume to get the stats, and like Mike Evans just comes off the field, which again, from like a Baker standpoint, he's his best weapon, right? It's like, dude, that. Chris, outside of Chris,
you out there.
Yeah, outside of Chris Godwin, like I need you to be out there to throw the ball to, and he'd just take plays off.
It's tough. I mean, I do want to immediately follow that up with, because we have the Jacksonville 49ers game. A few weeks ago, you said something downstairs, and I was like, I got to bring this up on the podcast because that's the first time I've ever heard it. And now Richard Sherman comes on, and he says it, and it was funny because you were in the car, you were like, no, I said it first. And I was like, and you said it first. We got it on air. And it's already published. It's out there. Trevor Lawrence is mid. Like, and there's no way that you can sit back and not watch that game and not be like, man, like, I don't know if Lawrence is like capable of taking this team to a different level.
He's got more turnovers than touchdowns.
Yeah.
Like, he's gotten bailed out. Like, their record is good and they look like a decent team, but he's gotten bailed out by like defensive plays or like random, ETN runs and things. And again, this is not to take away from Trevor Lawrence. Like, I'm not saying he's bad. He's mid. Like, he's not the generational level talent that everybody said he was going to be coming out of Clemson. And I still think people are putting him into that conversation. And that's why I said a few weeks ago, they're all wrong. And I think he, kind of got exposed to. Now, Niners is a good defense, and one bad game doesn't define your entire career because he's still young. But again, till I see something different, you're not going to change my mind on what I think Trevor Lawrence is.
I will say, because of, it's funny when my wife notices things. Like, here's someone that has really only gotten into football since Taylor Swift showed up. Let's be honest. Things I never thought I'd hear. When's the Chiefs game come on? I'm like, huh? Who are we talking about? Is this the person I'm married to? He throws a pass against the Lions yesterday for a touchdown that literally fitted in between a safety coming down corner. And even Holly was like, man, that was a really good pass. And Herbert, you see those type of throws where you're like, dude, that's different. That is a franchise, and not just a franchise quarterback. That is a very, not every guy can make that throw.
Even other guys in the NFL can't make that throw.
That is an elite arm throw.
Elite.
I have yet to see Lawrence make that. And the guy that immediately popped in my brain, I know we've talked about this before, but I think the guy that's in the league that would be you know what I can see his career going is Derek Carr. Here's this guy that you keep thinking, hey, here's the year.
Yeah.
We're going to have it. You got Calvin Ridley. You got Christian Kirk. You got Evan Ingram. You got ETN. You got all these pieces around you. You have a head coach in Doug Peterson. And, you're still sitting there. You're like, so when's it going to happen?
Yeah.
And that's what you keep waiting for Carr. You keep sitting back going, this is the year. He's got all the pieces. You're going to have it happen. And he just doesn't come through.
I don't know how else to explain it, or it's just when you watch him play, in the course of a game, there's just nothing. Again, there's times where he'll look pretty athletic with a good run, or he'll make a good pass. But again, there's just nothing that he does where you're just like, dang, that dude's good.
Yeah.
Right. And it's
or
funny.
He's different.
We saw this thing on our ride to lunch. It was CJ Stroud is the talent that everybody thought Trevor Lawrence was going to be.
I am so glad you brought that up.
And that's a good comparison, right? Because again, CJ Stroud is doing things right now where you're like, whoo, I can't wait till this dude develops a little bit. And again, I know people have been excited about Trevor Lawrence for a long time, but I can't necessarily think of any time where I've watched Trevor Lawrence and been like, whoo, I can't wait, and I haven't. And I don't know if it's ever going to come.
It's true. You just, I even think about his time in it. It's one of those ones you go back to Clemson and you go back and you watch and you're like, hey, had Justin Ross, he's probably the best receiver, had ETN, had all this stuff around him that he came out and you're like, man, that was that guy. It wasn't that he was making the throws. It was just for a true freshman, you go up, you win a national championship, all these things happen. You're like, oh man, these are the things that we, expect it now to sort of carry in. And now that he's here, as you said, it's at no point are the Jaguars yo, we got to find a new quarterback.
No, he's got NFL level talent. He's had that since he was a freshman at Clemson, right? It was very clear that dude's probably going to play on Sundays. But again, it's just not that next level of again, when your wife is out there just whoa, that was good. You're not going to see that. It doesn't happen.
I mean, the same happened. Herbert, to me, it's not that he's right there. It's in the same category with Mahomes. Mahomes does things on the field that you sit back and you're like, dude, that was a throw. And the sad thing is I sit back and I look at a guy that a lot of people also compare. Now, I don't think anyone says he's elite, but you see things that you go, yeah, that's definitely not elite. With Tua, when he underthrew that ball, you just sort of sit back and you, I know that people had to be sitting around was that the quarterback? Who threw that?
Yeah, it was funny because I remember watching it live and they were trying to throw out every excuse under the book. Oh, I think it got tipped. Oh, I think his arm got hit. Oh, maybe there was some grease on the ball. They were trying to come up with stuff and it was just nah, that's just Tua sometimes.
Just old noodle arm. You just that. It blew my mind to watch that. But it's the same thing with Tua and Lawrence. I think Lawrence has probably played better than Tua's had, especially against real competition. He can't find a way to like actually be good during those really big games and like find the winning edge to like take the team over the hump. Lawrence is especially in that position. Now, it was funny. Maul sends me a text on Sunday. He's like, hey, we do this like teasers every single Sunday. We'll find 3 games. And he's like, hey, what do you think? And I was like, well, the Jags, like, I know that they're getting 3 points, but like, I don't know. Like, I feel like the Jags should be more competitive. And you were like, yeah, I don't see San Francisco losing 4 straight, which it's like, it's always those like 2020, like after you say something like that, and you're like, man, I was stupid.
Yeah, you're like, how did I not think of that? Yeah, no, I have those every single week.
Because I sent him, I was like, I think that I got the Raiders, I've got the Cowboys, and I've got the Jags. And I landed, looked at the score, and I was like, man, I could not have been more wrong about the Jags. They were getting the brakes beat off of them, which I think it shows, like, one, I think that Purdy wasn't right mentally, like, got some...
Or physically, or his arm was hurting.
Yeah. Then he looks great. And you're like... And it's funny because it immediately silenced everybody. They were like, well, I guess we're not going to talk about Purdy.
Yeah, remember all that trash we were talking about Purdy? Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to drop that. Like, when the 49ers are healthy, which I said it solo, like, name another team that could lose their best wide receiver and lose their starting offensive left tackle and just be like, yeah, same team. Like, I get it's the NFL, but that doesn't – you don't just lose those guys for a few games and be like, no change.
Yeah, we're going to keep winning. Yeah, keep the same – yeah. But then they come back off a bye week. They get – Purdy's healthy. Debo comes back.
And you're like,
yeah,
49ers that we knew a few weeks ago before they lost to the Browns.
Yeah,
like,
doesn't matter that you lost 3 games. I mean, like that plays nothing into it. Like they're still going to win the division, and they might not get the bye, but there's still something to be reckoned with in the playoffs.
It will be tough for them. They need the Eagles to definitely fold a few, which it's great because they play the Eagles next week. Like I believe that's correct. I got to look that up real quick, but I know they for sure play them.
It's perfect because they're healthy. Like, because you hate to see those excuses of like, we could have won if whatever. But
excuse me, the Eagles play the Chiefs next week on Monday night. Give me that all day. Oh,
after we just talked about how bad the primetime games are, we get a great Thursday night matchup and a good.
Don't worry, Sunday night's Vikings Broncos. So at least Josh Jobs gets
the Broncos always in primetime.
I don't know because I guess that they think that Russell Wilson's finally going to have a comeout game.
It was last year though too. Remember how many times the Broncos were in primetime?
Yeah, whoever's the Bronco executive pitching these things.
They're playing tomorrow or they're playing tonight too against the Bills.
I know. I'll still watch it. Next game. Yeah, duh. It's still football. Got the
you peg me as a Bachelor kind of
Oh,
guy.
no. Yeah. Ugh. There's nothing I can think that's I don't even care.
Desperate House or no Real Housewives?
Yeah, the fact that you know all these things makes me more nervous about what you watch at home. Like, how do I even transition except going, oh, well, here's 2 things that are not any of those, the Browns, Ravens. Like, you said it downstairs. We were watching the highlights, and you go, that's the most Ravens thing ever. Like, the second people are like, hey, this may be the best team in the AFC.
Yeah. Oh, I think Lamar's an MVP. This is the best team in the NFL right now. Nah, we'll lose to the Browns.
Yeah.
Which that's not take away. I mean, like the Browns are a good, decent football team, right? Like Watson being healthy and like playing right obviously boosts their offense, but we've known that their defense has been legit. So like I say that jokingly, the Browns are a decent football team. It's just funny that the instant you get all of this buy-in on the Ravens is the first week that they tank or give up, a large lead that they had at the beginning.
This is my hot take. I'll see if you want to argue it. I have not brought this up. I really think we're about halfway through the year, a little over halfway. I think Myles Garrett should be not just defensive MVP, but like NFL MVP.
Dude,
like there's been no one who's been a game wrecker more.
I will not argue it because I mean you probably have these times too where like you're watching the TV and like they like lead in with like we're gonna do this and you jump to a conclusion of who they're talking about. They were talking about the MVP or they got a possible MVP in this game. And my mind, immediately went to Myles Garrett. And when they were like, oh, whatever about Lamar Jackson, I was like, oh yeah, he's obviously doing pretty good. But my mind went to Myles Garrett.
He is like, he's a force. Like, every game he's getting a sack. Like, and if he's not there, he's right there. Like, he is. It's not that he's like unknown.
This is another little I'll call it toot my own horn. I don't know if you remember. This might have been like 2 years ago. You sent me little things that we always send back and forth about the last 20 years of number one draft picks.
Yeah.
And we had to like rank them as far as who did I put number one?
I think you put Garrett.
Myles Garrett. Now I remember your comment. You were like, "Ooh, that's big praise for Myles Garrett." And I mean, I just call it like I see it. And again, I'm tooting my own horn here, but like, he's legit, dude. He is an absolute force.
He is. I mean, especially now that I'm sitting back thinking about that, because the last really number one guy to come out that was, in my opinion, better than Myles Garrett was, I believe it was 98 with Peyton Manning. Like, Peyton was really that. I mean, Peyton was that guy, like top 5 NFL quarterback. But from the standpoint of what the Browns are getting out of Garrett, like, there's only probably one thing. I think the only thing the reason he probably doesn't get more like headlines is because of what happened in the Steelers game years ago.
Wait.
Sledgehammer.
Yeah, hit him with the helmet.
That quarterback had problems way before he got hit in the head with the helmet. He was done before that. It was just that play will always sort of like live. The NFL's done a good job of like, hey, let's not bring that up ever again. Like, when the Browns play the Steelers, like, we're just not going to mention that it ever happened. But you can't sit back and look at what Garrett's doing this year. And especially like when you look around the NFL, like, I don't really feel like there's a clear cut, like, yo, this dude's doing amazing. Like, don't get me wrong, Mahomes is still Mahomes. Jalen Hurts is still doing Jalen Hurts things. But from a standpoint of like, it reminds me of like when J.J. Watt, like probably about 10 years ago.
Or like Aaron Donald a few years back.
Yeah, was just having an amazing year that you're like, hey, man, like, I think it's time that we recognize that this, like, the Browns aren't winning these games if it's not for Myles Garrett.
And it makes it more special, too, when it's a defensive player. Just because it's so easy, the way the rules are built, the way, people like to see, scoring. It's natural to just kind of draw that award. It's like the Heisman in college. Like, we just pick, whoever's doing good at the time and their quarterback is a Heisman candidate. But like, it's easy to draw towards the offensive side of the ball for that. And again, it's typically quarterbacks, but like, when you have a defensive player doing things like this, that it makes it more special because it's so rare.
Yes.
Of how he tweeted something or X'd something. I don't know whatever you say nowadays, but it was something about like, he always wears that sleeve, and there's a few games where like he won't wear the sleeve, and it's like this weird coincidence because he's jacked. I mean, the man is built like an absolute refrigerator. Yeah. And anytime he doesn't wear the sleeve, he gets like drug tested the week after, because it's just like no human being can be that jacked. Like, what's going on? But,
I still remember when he was coming out. What did he come out of? Do you remember?
It was A&M.
A&M.
Yeah.
He was doing these, like, it's funny. You go to the gym, go to any gym, and you'll find those big square jump tables that like have a pad on top, and it never fails. Like, you'll see some like 45-year-old man trying to jump on top of like just like a 12-inch. Like, there was a video online of him. I think it was 63 inches. Like,
that's hops.
Oh, like it's we're talking almost 6 feet from the ground, gets his feet up and stands up. And like, when you see it, like, I'll try to find the video and post it to this for those who watch on YouTube. When you see that, you're like, yo, yeah, that dude's ungodly. Like, that's not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
That's like jumping out of the swimming pool onto the side. You're like, yeah, you're not supposed to, I don't know what physics law you just broke, but it's one of them, and you're not supposed to do that. The Brown, we get back to that division, like, you look, that should be 3 playoff teams. Like, I think the Steelers will eventually get proven, like, hey, you're not that team. Browns, Ravens, Bengals, I don't want to play either one of those teams in the playoff. Like, I think they're all teams that, crazy enough, could make a run. Like, it just takes the right game for them to beat the Chiefs.
The Browns probably have the hardest, I think, sustainability to make that run. But yeah, I see what you mean. Like they could beat anybody in any given week.
It was funny. So when I was in Pittsburgh, I was taking a cab over to the stadium, an Uber, and the guy is in full Browns gear, like Browns toboggan, Browns. He had Browns gloves on, and we were talking. And I was like, "Hey, why do you think the Browns are so inconsistent?" And he's like, he's sitting there. He goes, "Well, it's one answer," and I'm expecting for him to be like Sean Watson, and he didn't. He said something. I was like, that is so true. Nick Chubb's not there. Like,
wow.
If Chubb was there.
Didn't even think about that.
Yes.
Yeah,
you forget that
wow.
like he's not there. And you're like, yeah, because he's like anytime the Browns needed a play, where'd they go to? Chubb. Like Chubb's going to get this yard. Chubb's going to make a play. They put the ball into his hands. If Chubb is playing right now, you sort of sit back and go, dude,
look out.
Yeah, they're good.
Wow.
Like a totally different team because of Chubb, which I was like, man, thank you for that. I'm going to use that on my podcast.
That's why bringing in fans and doing stuff like that is so, because, we watch all these games, but we don't have like this invested interest in some of these teams. Like, I don't care if the Browns win or not. You know what I mean? But like, you get those guys that have the interest in some of these teams, and they're going to bring some different perspective to it.
100%. Yeah, I did see this other clip. I'm going to just spend all night when I put together this NFL episode. I didn't even send you it. It's a dog running through the tunnels, but it's not a dog. It's like they took a mini Shrek and they have him like somehow CGI'd over, and they're like, that's what Kyler Murray looks like when he runs.
Dang.
It was so mean, but it was so true. Like because they had it side by side of when he like runs for a first down. And you're like, that's the exact same thing that I just saw on the football field. Like, it's yet again just another like shocking reason of how Arthur Smith isn't fired as a head coach. Like here's yet again another guy that you sit back and you're like, I think even fans realize, and that's why fans are like hammering for it. It's like, that's not a head football coach. Like he's not, like this guy's not making the team better.
No,
like
absolutely not.
He's hurting the team. Like 2 weeks ago, which I know you got Bijan, you went out and traded him for him on your roster. You at least get a touchdown. It was almost felt like it was overdue. The week prior, like he had like 8 touches of the football. Like you can't go draft a guy and then be like, "Hey, I'm only going to give you 8 times to figure it out."
It's just it doesn't make sense because it's like the way the running backs are nowadays. It's like you're only going to get so many years at them before they break down or do whatever. So now here you have this guy you went and drafted super high to get him, and you don't even give him the ball. You're just wasting it.
And they don't have a good quarterback. Like I get it.
It's
like,
very clear too. Every time Bijan touches the ball, you get those little feelings where you're just like, "Oh, look at him go!" Like he does things. Where
this
you're like,
is who we drafted.
Yeah, he can be really good. Do that more, and they don't.
Correct. And that all comes back on coaching. Like this is. I get that Murray came back this week. Like it's the first time that he's played football in over a year, and they beat the Falcons. Like
yeah.
That's more of a shot at the Falcons than it is the Cardinals. Like, bravo to Murray for being able to come back and win a game. But the Falcons, like, they're doing Falcons things. Like, they just can't have the coaching in the right position to be like, hey, let's do this that makes sense, and let's put our guys in the right position. It sucks, which it's funny because that immediately translates to, hey, what's a team that has coaching that limits them all the time? It's the Chargers.
I mean, yeah, classic organizational failure of like teams that they've had that have been really good, and you've had like Hall of Famers on your team and just have nothing to prove for it. Is the Chargers do that year in and year out? And we talked about it. I think again, the Chargers are a much better team than their record shows, but that's just how the Chargers operate. Even though they're in ball games and they look like really good, a good team, like because the Lions are legit. The Lions are like legit contenders in the NFC, and they were right there, trading blow for blow. It's just you could almost guessed if you had to pick who's going to come out on top, you would always just say not the Chargers.
Yeah, and it's like when the game mattered. It's fun. We talked about Campbell. Like when the game mattered, Campbell gambled, and it ultimately
paid off.
Paid off. Won on the game. And you sit back and you think about the Chargers and you put them in and you're like, hey, when the Chargers gamble, how does it work out? And you're like, never.
Usually doesn't.
It doesn't. Like, it's never good. Herbert, like that team, it's great. You sort of said something downstairs, which I was like, it's overshadowed. Like, Keenan Allen looks 20 years old.
Dude,
again.
he's balling out.
Really playing
Doing
well.
so well.
Like, he looks like the Keenan Allen from 5-6 years ago. Like, you were like, dude, that's a number one wide receiver in the NFL. And I don't feel like he gets talked about enough how good he's playing this year. Like, he's lights
killing
out.
it. Yeah.
Lights out for the Chargers. Which that's what they need. Like, they've had to rely on Eckler for so long just because, like, they didn't have any wide receivers to throw to. The Chargers are a good team. They just have to find a way to get out of the head coaching's, like, problem.
Yeah.
Like, it's yet again, it's like, I just sit back and I go, man, can you imagine if the Chargers fired him and went out and got Eric Bellamy? Like, that's a matchup I'd like to see. Like, offense is no longer going to have any problems. Like, you give him, Herbert and say run, that's the type of decision making you like to see the Chargers make.
Yeah.
But another wide receiver that went off, it's funny. You sent me a text. You didn't have him on your list. You're like, hey, what team? You're in a keeper league. And I said it, and I haven't said this to you, but I felt better now that it's worked out.
CD's been killing it.
Like, Lamb is like.
Oh, I'll give it to Dak. I like to hate on Dak, but like Dak has absolutely stepped up his game too. I mean, he's not throwing interceptions. It helps when your defense is so good, right? Like,
it helps when you're playing the Giants.
I don't know. I know. I mean, gosh, but still, like, even against other teams, like Dak has shown up, and he's playing really well. They've lost a few games, one of the Cardinals, but even even in some of the losses though, Dak has stepped up his game. So I give him that. They're obviously a contender in the NFC.
Brennan Cooks is he's a good wide receiver. Gallup just has not showed up. Like, it's one of those ones that I always go back to, like, man, you had Amari Cooper. Like, if you had they refused, they wanted to pay Zeke. So instead of getting rid of Zeke, they got rid of Amari Cooper. And I look back at that decision, I go, that will be the reason that haunts you for the playoffs, is because when it comes time that you need that other guy over there, more times than not, I think Amari Cooper is going to make that play before Brandon Cooks makes that play. Like, that's just how I view it with the Cowboys. The Giants on the other side of the ball, we talked about this at the beginning of the season of, like, you don't go out and pay somebody that much. Now, I'm not saying that because he got hurt. Like, I feel awful for Daniel Jones. I don't wish an injury upon anybody. It sucks that he tore his ACL. You sit back and you look at that and you go, man, that's awful. But from the standpoint of that team,
look at the situation you're in now, and you got nothing to show for it.
Nothing.
Like, nothing. This would be a good, like, if the Giants continue losing and they end up with the number one pick, do they go get Caleb Williams?
You have to.
I don't know if they have. I don't know if they can. You would think they should, but how do you? I mean, unless it's like another Brock Osweiler situation where they pay another team to have that quarterback play for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and this is why we talked about it. Why you don't pay someone like that? Because injury aside, he's not winning games for you, and like, you're stuck with that because you can't pay anybody else to help bring in the talent.
Honestly, what the Giants need to do now, they're not going to be able to because they got him on a 1-year deal. Saquon's gone next year.
He's thanking his lucky stars.
Yeah,
he is so happy that he didn't sign that franchise tag and that he's on a 1-year deal now.
He's gone.
Yeah.
Like, and I hope, like, you always hope it for, like, the guys that you're like, dude, that's a baller player. Like, I hope he goes to a team that finally wins. Like, and I hope what Saquon does is he takes, like, a pay cut. Like, the smartest thing that I can think Saquon to do, like, if I sit back here and go, hey, what's a good team that he'd be a great fit on? It's like the Eagles or the Chiefs. Like, go to a team that it's like, hey, I'm for sure going to be your number one running back. I'll take a pay cut, but I'm leaving here with a Super Bowl. Like, that's what you hope for him. Like, I want him to get paid, but he won't be able to sign this mega huge deal. Now, if he goes to somewhere like, hey, I'll go to the Jacksonville or something, like, he'll get paid, but you're just never going to win. Like, that's sort of the issue with it. But the Giants, like you said, it's a clean kill throughout that whole team. Like, I don't know of anybody on that team that other teams are like, yeah, I'd want that guy. Like, outside of Saquon, there's no one there. Like, they're a terrible football team. Which you sit back and we talked about them earlier. It's interesting. I think the Commanders like have pieces there. Like they just, especially on the defensive side of the ball, from corner, safety, linebacker, they need a lot of help on the defensive side. On the offensive side, it's like Ryan Robinson looks good. You still have Scary Terry. You have Dotson. Like Sam Howell looks really good.
They have some pieces, right? Like they kind of like it's almost like the Texans, but not necessarily like the youth of the Texans. Like they have some pieces there that when they show up and kind of all click, you're like, okay, like I can see. I mean, they challenged the Eagles twice, right? Like that's big, and they're just missing something, or they need a little bit more time to mesh or something. But yeah, they've got some pieces there where they can be decent.
I don't know when this happened. Let me look it up real quick because I do want to make a prediction on this that I think happens, but we'll see when this will actually play out. In 2 weeks, I think the Commanders beat the Cowboys.
I mean, I wouldn't agree with you, but like I could see it happening. I wouldn't be like entirely shocked.
I think it's just one of those teams that a lot of teams sleep on.
Yeah, you
like,
kind of overlook them. You kind of wait. You're like, all right, what's next on the schedule, kind of thing.
Because you look at their record and it's like you're 4-6. Hey, this isn't a good football team. We think their head coach is getting fired at the end of the year. Like it's a rookie quarterback pretty much, and Sam Howell. Like I don't have a lot of faith in this team, but they are. They tested the Seahawks. They should have beat the Seahawks. Like they had every reason to beat the Seahawks, just couldn't get it. They're right there in games. They're just not able to.
I want to say they should have beaten the Eagles twice already.
Oh yeah, they took them to overtime on the first one, and then the second game
they were winning a good portion of it. The Eagles came back at the end.
So they've lost. The only game they really got blown out is against Buffalo. They lost 37-3. The following week, they take the Eagles to overtime and lost 34-31. And then they gave the Bears their first win, 40-20. Lost to the Giants, which is a terrible. I think that was with Tyrod Taylor, 14-7. Lost the Eagles, 38-31. And then they just lost to Seattle, 29-26. Like, they have guys, they're a mediocre. I would say, I wouldn't classify them as a terrible team in the NFL.
No.
They're sort of mediocre. No. Like, you just don't know what you're going to get. But it's probably like a 7-8, or I guess now with 17-game season, it's like a 7-10 record.
They're like a right around 500, maybe slightly sub 500 team.
Exactly.
Which again isn't like good, but like all it takes is like a few of those games to swing in a different direction, and it's a different season for them.
And then on the opposite side, you got Seattle. You like it. We've been saying this like. Gino's just not having a good year.
Nah, like I think it's one of those classic Mitch Trubisky type years where like he came out and again he was never really anything up until that year he played on the first year he played on the Seahawks, and sometimes it's just the fact that like people don't have film on you, and it's he had a great season and it was like all right, people now have seen what he can do, and it's kind of like back to classic Gino. I don't want to say he's bad, but like he's not having anywhere near the season he had last year, and it's just that's what's really you could see there's some potential there. Like the Seahawks want to be good, but it's kind of all just hinging on Gino right now.
Yeah, because they have even more talent around him when they got Smith and Jigba. I think a lot of people when they drafted him, they go, man. Seattle's probably going to challenge San Francisco, and now after a few, halfway through the season, you're like, Seattle needs to really win some of these games to be a playoff team going into it. Do I think that they can shock someone in the playoffs? 100%. Do I think they're a Super Bowl team? No. Like, they're not that.
No.
And then, as you talked about games that should have been flexed out last night, like,
what a boring game.
Dude, what a terrible game.
Boring, terrible game. Like, if there's ever a game where you're like, I don't want to stay up and watch this, I would rather go to sleep, that was the game.
I think it sums up just how bad of decisions the Jets made prior to the Matt Saleh era. Like, think about
Robert Saleh.
Excuse me. You lose your starter quarterback. And most teams are like, hey, we have this backup who was like a 7th-round pick. Who the Jets have? They have a first-round pick. Like, I think he went top 5. Like, here's Zach Wilson. Like, most teams would be like, man, we got a real chance. We got a first-round draft pick sitting there in the backup slot. Like, this should be good.
Yeah. Looking at you, Mel Kiper.
Dude, oh my gosh. Zach Wilson is awful.
Bad.
Awful.
Bad.
It's hard. Like, it literally, as you said, like, it's bad to watch. Like, you feel bad for the Jets because there's no doubt that the Jets stay in games because their defense is that good, and they keep you can almost like feel the energy on the sideline. And you see it with Salah's face, like when he's sitting there just mean staring. It's like, will you guys just do something?
Yeah.
Like, it's
Please.
that stick.
Please.
Like, do something.
Do something.
Just something. Like, just we're doing everything that we have to defensively for us to win this game, and you're not doing anything. Like, in fact, you're hurting us. Like, you're doing the opposite of anything good.
Yeah, I mean, like they do. They have an amazing defense. Breece Hall's balling out. Like, Garrett Wilson is the only reason Zach Wilson's even able to complete any passes. It's just it's just unfortunate that because the QB is such a big piece, when you have a player that's playing that bad, it just drags the entire team down.
Which I'll get to the Raiders before I make this point. Like, the Raiders, like, it's amazing what happens when you have a coach that meshes with the players. You can tell the Raiders, like, they're having fun. They enjoy the winning. Like, you see it and you go, that's football. The Raiders need, I don't know if Pierce is the guy. It's tough.
It was just, they had to get rid of Josh McDaniel. Like,
yes.
That was it. And I think the players all feel that. They're like, finally. Like, because now they have a chance. It's not this season, but it's like, fine. Like, we got rid of one of the biggest problems that we have. Now we can maybe have a chance and do something.
Yes, if we get some good ownership in mind, like a good GM and a good coach, we have pieces to be good. We just need to get some people in here that make the actual organizational decisions that don't put us in bad decisions to lose. That being said, I'll go back to the Jets with this. This is, I want to say a hot take, but it's more just like what I think happens. If by any means Rodgers comes back and they get into the playoffs, I don't want if I'm another team, I do not want to play the Jets.
Dude, and I'll be honest, like, as weird as it sounds, the Bills are like 5-4.
They're not a good football team.
The Dolphins have clearly not been able to prove themselves against good teams. The Patriots are obviously one of the worst teams in football. It's not that far-fetched. Like, if he can come back and, with like 5 games maybe left and they run the table, they could take the division. It's a not high probability, but it is an absolute possibility to happen.
If they can get in, now I still think that their greatest challenge with their offensive line, like, for me, it's a team like the Browns. Like, I don't think that the Chiefs, the Bengals, or the Ravens really have that type of defense that, like, is scary when playing, the Jets offensive line. But Myles Garrett, like, hey, you got a guy that's fresh off an Achilles surgery. He doesn't need to be running for his life.
Yeah.
That's where I sit back. But it's clear from all of their games, like when you watch the Jets, that you're like, hey, if they just had Aaron Rodgers.
If they could just score a touchdown every once in a while.
I can't get over that. Like, when you watch them, if they had Rodgers this year, I think that I'm sort of sitting pretty on where my projection was. Like, I think people are like, hey, this is not a team anyone wants to play. Like, this is a really good football team.
I saw this meme. This can wrap up the end of this, but it was like how Jets fans feel right now. And it was a clip of Trump when they asked him something. He's like, I don't even think about it anymore. I'm just built different. I just do it every single week, and I just show up, and I don't even think about it. That's what it's like to be a Jets fan. I'm just built different.
We're just not going to talk about it anymore.
That's great.
But that wraps up a good episode. Thanks for coming in. It'll probably be me for a few more weeks, and then we'll get back together. But it's always good having you on. So thanks for tuning in. You got anything else?
Nope, glad to be here. Thanks for tuning in.
I'm Paul Chalks. See you next time.